Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland. And this is my weekly show where I come on and talk in depth about a particular film. And I know I'm deep into my dive into the Coen brothers filmography, so we're going to be getting to The Man Who Wasn't There. And we have three parts to the show, so we always start with coming attractions. We get into our main feature and then do some Q&A and have a couple of questions based off of some of the releases that have been coming out lately. So to get things started with coming attractions, this weekend of April 9th, we have a new horror film called Held coming out, a really fantastic drama called Mafi that I'm going to be having a review coming out for shortly because I literally just watched it and had a screener for it. There's a silly Thunder Force film with Octavia Spencer and Melissa McCarthy from Netflix. But I wanted to talk about Voyagers. And this is a new film coming. And this is, if it's science fiction, you're usually going to have my attention. It's a crew of astronauts on a multi generational mission to send into paranoia and madness, not knowing what is real or not. And what really grabs me about this particular film is the genre. Colin Farrell, who I love as an actor. It's funny because I used to hated him seeing like Alexander and seeing Daredevil growing up. I always thought he was annoying. And then in Bruges completely changed my perspective on him. And ever since, I've really appreciated him as an actor. Saving Mr. Banks, obviously in Bruges. He just is such a talented actor. The Lobster, Seven Psychopaths. And here he's leading the way as the head of these astronauts. But we also have some young cast members: Ty Sheridan, Lily Rose Depp, Fionn Whitehead, um, Isaac Hempstead Wright, who's Bram the Broken from Game of Thrones. And what really grabs my attention, obviously, about this is the science fiction, Colin Farrell in this, and really talented young cast of leads. I did look up Neil Berger's the one who's directing this. He did Divergent. Not really grabbing my attention based off of that, but I hope that this film delivers at least the science fiction aspects that I really want to enjoy. I enjoyed The Upside quite a bit, and The Illusionist is a really underappreciated film that got completely overshadowed by The Prestige, which is an amazing film. So Berger has done some strong films. Honestly, I haven't seen Divergent. Wasn't really drawn into checking that out, but I'm very interested in seeing Voyagers. So I'm really hoping that film Voyagers pays off and I'll be having a great review coming out for it. But those are the coming attractions for this weekend of April 9th. It's April already. It's crazy, isn't it? And we've been doing this show now for a while as I think I'm getting towards the middle ground of my dive into the Coens as we are jumping into the 2000s. Now, the thing is, they started doing more films more regularly right when 2000 came around. And I think this film that we're going to be talking about today is a film that is probably their least known and most underappreciated. And I think it's because there's no big hooks to the film, like a crazy group of characters. There's an interesting group of characters. There's no like big time kind of story. This is a very intense, intimate story. This is also black and white. The Man Who Wasn't There. And the Coens go into this film. This is a real homage to noir. This noir, in particular, is taking place in the suburbs, the small town suburbs after World War II. So it's not so much like Sam Spade, but instead we have Billy Bob Thornton, who is playing this barber, who in his opening narration, the narration is fantastic here. Billy Bob Thornton is a really underappreciated actor. He is very talented and he can be comedic, he can be intense, he can be intimidating. He also can be very contemplative. And in this role, he's the man who wasn't there. He's flying under the radar through the whole thing, and very rarely does he get engaged and passionate about something. The way that he talked about, he's not a barber. He's just the second barber at a barber shop. It's a thing that he does. He's there because he married into it, because his brother-in-law, Michael Bottalucco, aka George Nelson from Oh Brother Where Art Thou, who's this film features a great group of character actors, including Joe Polito, who plays so many great characters in Coen Brothers films, and here is definitely a con man trying to get money for capital investments and stuff like that. And Frances McDormand plays Billy Bob Thornton's wife. They don't have a very loving marriage, and you really see it. It feels very hollow and lacks passion. And you see that when her boss, Big Dave Brewster, played by James Gandolfini, comes over for dinner. And Gandolfini is so fantastic in this film because you see that vulnerability that you see in The Sopranos. He isn't just some big, hulking, intimidating guy. There's a side to him. And he's totally doing Frances McDormand and having an affair here. And Billy Bob Thornton's character knows it. And because Ed Crane is not stupid. He's not simple. He's just not the most engaged in life. And it's interesting what he latches onto in this film in terms of his passion, as Richard Jenkins plays a former client who used to cut his hair, and his daughter is played by Scarlett Johansson, who I think at the time of this film is like 17 years old, like real life 17 years old. And she plays piano. And Ed Crane is so drawn in by her playing. He's infatuated with it. Is he infatuated with her? And we start to see these levels, and that builds up to a particular point. But this is really the only thing he gets passionate about in this film. And this story revolves around so many twists and turns and stabs in the back and twists of fate, that this is the kind of film that is so Coen's. It's so awkward. Its plot is so unexpected and ironic in so many ways, because this is a noir. There's death, there's mystery, there's covering things up, because James Gandolfini and Billy Bob Thornton get into it. Gandolfini's attacking him. He's going to choke him to death, and he goes down. And you would not expect Ed Crane to be the kind of guy that would step up and defend himself and kill somebody in the moment. And it's so unexpected, and it happens. And that's the crux of the story, because who gets arrested for it? His wife, Frances McDormand. And then he brings in a big city lawyer, played by Tony Shalhoub, who, it's so funny growing up only knowing him from Monk, and then seeing him in Barton Fink, and in this, where he's so self-assured and so confident, and then seeing him in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is so great. And Tony Shalhoub steals every scene he's in this film. There's Joe Polito is great, Bottalucco's great, Gandolfini is great, and there's so many small, just little tiny performances that pop up through here, like Richard Jenkins, not in it that much. Brian Haley pops up in a small role. And there's just all these little performances that really stand out, and it makes so much sense, because you know what you're watching. You're watching a Coen Brothers film. And you have these great moments of this legal trying to figure out, how's Tony Shalhoub's character going to get her off? And Ed opening up and really being honest about what happens. But nobody takes him seriously. He goes with his brother-in-law to the bank to get a loan out for bail for his sister and for Ed's wife. The banker won't bring him in. He's like, he should wait here. He's never there. And that's what's so amazing about this. The title of this film is so great because nobody really notices him. Everybody walks over him, and nobody suspects him, except he is the agent of the plot of this film. He is the one who sparks it all. Now, the thing that probably makes this film not stand up in terms of the greats of Coen Brothers films is you have a tough time connecting with this film and these characters. It's emotionally distant, but it's so crafted so well and so unexpected in terms of its plot. I'm enthralled watching it. And this, I think this was only the second time I've ever watched this film, and I appreciated it so much the second time around. Because first I'm like, this was a really well-made Coen Brothers film the first time I watched it. I'm like, but I don't love it. Watching it again, I can see everything, all the little details. Yes, is there a lack of connection to Ed? But Thornton does such an amazing job acting and doing the narration in this. You're just drawn in. Frances McDormand, there's a moment where they're being questioned by Shaloub in this perfectly shot scene, and the lighting is perfect in the black and white. I'll gush about Deakins soon. Trust me, I didn't forget. But this scene when Ed's saying, because he had an affair with my wife. And you can see the realization on Frances McDormand, the little things, her eyes, the way she struggles to look over at him, the emotion boiling under the surface. Those things work so well in this film, and those little details. Gandolfini tears it up on the screen when he's on screen. Polito is the same kind of way. Badalucco. But it's the understated performances of Billy Bob Thornton and Frances McDormand that really stand out in this film. One particular scene where you get some decent amount of dialogue from Richard Jenkins, fantastic character actor. He's great. One scene that I absolutely love, because the twist of fate here is what happens to Ed's wife is that she hangs herself. She's going down for money laundering, for murdering her boss, but her husband technically killed him. Was it murder? Was it self-defense? That's to be discussed. But she didn't do it. And cop comes in, takes him to a bar, wonderfully shot. The lights coming in through the windows, the smoke, because there's a lot of cigarette smoking in this. You could just see the smoke in the rays of light. It's so perfectly lit. And he tells her, and he tells him, your wife was pregnant. And when Ed says, my wife and I haven't had sexual relations in years, the cop's just like, you see it in the hands, the physical acting, the reaction to that. You see it turning in that cop's head, and it's such a beautifully acted scene. It's so perfect. And you're sitting there enthralled by it and just sitting here watching this unbelievably uncomfortable scene and what should be emotionally devastating. And the poor guy is just trying to pass on some information. And the climax of the film, how the story goes, where Ed, his wife is dead, his brother-in-law is totally disconnected, not cutting hair anymore. He's in the first chair at the barber shop. He really, really wants to get Scarlett Johansson into a school to be trained to do music. And a tryout doesn't go as planned. And they're driving back, and he's so intense about it. And she comes on to him and tries to come on to him. And they get in an accident, and he wakes up to cops arresting him for the murder of Joe Polito, who's found at the bottom of a river. He is not tried for the the death that he caused, but it comes back to bite him. And that's such the irony of the story, and just so engrossing and intriguing. The Man Who Wasn't There is such a great film with such twisted and just delicately pieced together plot. and it's so great. And you can get past and just enjoy the technical aspects and the plot, even if you don't feel super connected with these characters. But the technical aspects, the Coens are and Deakins, how they shoot this film, it is unbelievable. You have to watch it to just appreciate the lighting, the shadows, the rays of light, the black and white. It is beautiful film. And Carter Burwell's piano score is so emotive and melancholic and just sad. And it just puts that mood throughout the whole entire film. This film is really underappreciated, and I hope more people give it some attention. And I hope that listening about this film is enough to get your attention to go watch it. And it's definitely worth your time. But I'm really looking forward to hopping into Intolerable Cruelty next week. Lady Killers the following week, not so much. Still have fun with it though. But I love Intolerable Cruelty. But this is the unsung film of the Coen brothers filmography, is The Man Who Wasn't There. This black and white noir starring Billy Bob Thornton, Frances McDormand, and James Gandolfini. Go check it out. But that is our feature of the week. Time to get into the last part of our show where we talk about some questions, some Q&A, and pulling up what we have here this week. Favorite film fights. And I'm doing this because, Godzilla vs. Kong has come out, it's making a big splash. And I thought about some of my favorite fights, and I'm specifically thinking about like small scale, like one-on-one, maybe two-on-one, one-on-one, one-on-one kind of thing. Not like a big battle, like the end of Endgame. That's a war going on. That is a battle. I'm thinking about fights. And I know in Civil War, the fight between Cap, Bucky, and Iron Man at the end of that film is so emotional and intense and impactful. And I love every second of it. You can think about like Die Hard, where John McClane fights Carl, and John McClane just like going at it, talking smack, just saying everything that's going to come to his head. He's the underdog. He's like half his size, and he's going nuts on him. I love those kinds of moments. Probably my favorite fight, though, one other one, Princess Bride, that sword fight. It's just so much fun between Inigo and the Dread Pirate Roberts, aka Wesley. And it's just so fun. And it's a beautiful fight. It has so much charm to it. But my favorite one-on-one fight in any film is in the Wolverine. When Wolverine gets his healing back and he's fully healthy again, and we get him, the Wolverine, finally in his own in this film, I think really for the first time at that point during this film, going one-on-one with Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays Shingen, who's Mariko's father. And he's in like the samurai gear. He has his katana, and boy, is that an intense fight. I wish that, like, if they build that out and made that the climax of the film, would have been a perfect ending. And like Hugh Jackman's looking like ripped out of his mind, veins popping, and he's just like rampaging. And Sonata is a fantastic swordsman in this film, and they're going toe to toe, and it's so fantastic. It's intense. It is what I wish. So, like, I don't usually do this, but if I were to rewrite that third act of that film, forget Viper or get her crap out of there, get her out, have him, Wolverine, fighting a human-sized suit of the Silver Samurai suit, and just having a fight like he did with Sonata's character, that would have been amazing. Would have been an amazing climax to that film. But at least we get a condensed version of that earlier on, and it's so awesome. It's in the intensity, the like just that moment building off of Logan almost died, almost, and then comes back and shows who he really is. And that's the first time you really see him. And it's such a great moment. And personally, for me, it's my favorite fight in movies. Obviously, there's a whole lot of things like you go in the John Wick films, so many action films. But also, I want to talk about favorite movie creatures because, Godzilla versus Kong. My personal favorites are honestly from the Lord of the Rings films. I love the Balrog. When that beast finally reveals itself to be this giant demon horned winged looking thing with a giant sword and whip, and like Gandalf stands tall against it, it's like it is amazing, and it's like and you could just feel like the flames from inside it like boiling over. It's just like so intense and so amazing. I love the Mumakil, the giant elephants from the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Obviously, they're introduced in the Two Towers, but like when they come in the Return of the King in that battle, it is amazing. I love the line. The Legolas fight on the Mumakil, especially when he's surfing on it, looks kind of bad now with the ragdoll CGI. But when Gimli's just like, it still only counts as one, I'm just like, yes. But it's amazing. I love elephants too. And the Mumakil were so cool in how they're constructed. And the Nazgul, there's some creepy dragons. Creepy. And I have to say, though, just a little shout out to The Hobbit because Smaug, Benedict Cumberbatch, and your, your weird lizard acting is so great. And it's such an amazing motion capture performance. But those Lord of the Rings definitely have my favorite creatures. But you know what? You all should do comment on this video. Tell me what your favorite movie fight is, what your favorite movie creatures are. I also asked that question on my Instagram last week, so leave it in the comments. Let's chat about it. But that is this week's show for Welcome to the Wasteland. We talked about the Voyagers, we talked about the man who wasn't there, and talked about some great fights from movies and giant creatures. And it's been another fun time. I look forward to talking about intolerable cruelty next week. So, what you should do if you want some questions asked next time, put them in the comments and I'll include them. Or message me on Instagram. And if you ever want to join the show and talk about an upcoming film, we have basically the next 3 weeks. We have Intolerable Cruelty, we have Lady Killers, and Matt should be joining me again to talk about No Country for Old Men, which I am so excited to talk about. But this is another great week of Welcome to the Wasteland. But I want to thank all of you for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.